The other day, I was driving really fast and crashed my car pretty badly, but I didn't get hurt because, well, it's just I was playing a video game. But in real life, some people have been through even crazier stuff and managed to survive with a lot of luck, like exploding toilets or falling into giant vats of chocolate. It's pretty wild to think about. People who've survived the impossible have faced incredibly challenging situations, but managed to come out alive against all odds. Imagine skiing down a mountain and suddenly falling into a deep crevasse. Falling down a crevasse while skiing is terrifying due to the sheer isolation and physical danger involved. The skier plummeted 49 feet into a deep crevasse, surrounded by icy walls with no immediate way to escape. The fear here comes from the sense of helplessness and the realization that any wrong move could result in serious injury or death. Additionally, the prolonged rescue process adds to the tension, as the skier had to rely on luck and the assistance of others to make it out alive. The lucky people in these stories managed to escape incredibly dangerous situations by sheer chance and fortune. Now, picture waiting for a train, minding your own business, when suddenly you collapse onto the tracks and a train comes roaring towards you. You're inches away from being crushed to death, feeling the rush of air as the train passes mere inches above you. The woman in this situation was simply waiting for a train when a sudden drop in blood pressure caused her to collapse onto the tracks. The fear here comes from the shock of the sudden accident and the realization of how close she came to being crushed by the oncoming train. The fact that she narrowly escaped being turned into a human smoothie. Despite facing seemingly insurmountable odds, the skier who fell into a crevasse and the commuter who narrowly avoided being crushed by a train are prime examples of people who survived the impossible through luck and resilience. One day, a man in New York was using the bathroom when his toilet exploded. It shattered into pieces, sending him flying backward and knocking him out. Luckily, he survived with some injuries and got stitches at the hospital. Turns out, the explosion happened because of some plumbing work that caused a buildup of pressure in the pipes. It's a bizarre and scary story. The luckiest people in this story are undoubtedly the residents of the building, including Michel Pierre, who narrowly escaped serious harm when their toilets exploded due to a plumbing mishap. A guy named Jeremy was cutting down a big tree in Canada when he heard a loud crack. Turns out, the base of the tree was rotten, and it split right down the middle as Jeremy was cutting into it. This kind of split is called a barber chair. Luckily, Jeremy jumped out of the way just in time, narrowly avoiding getting crushed by the falling tree. It was a lucky escape from a dangerous situation. Jeremy Cadot is a prime example of people who survived the impossible, narrowly escaping serious injury or even death when a rotten tree he was cutting split unexpectedly, demonstrating the unpredictable dangers of his profession. At a chocolate factory in Pennsylvania, there was a gas leak one day that nobody took seriously. Then, a huge explosion happened, and the factory burst into flames. Patricia, a worker there, caught on fire and fell into a big vat of liquid chocolate in the basement. The chocolate put out the fire, but she broke her feet and couldn't get out of the vat. Firefighters couldn't see or hear her, but the water they sprayed in eventually helped her climb out. She fell into a pool of water on the floor and screamed for help until rescuers found her. She's going to be okay, but it was a crazy story of survival. The luckiest people in the world include Patricia Borges, who survived a catastrophic explosion at a chocolate factory by falling into a vat of liquid chocolate, which extinguished the flames and ultimately saved her life, despite sustaining injuries. In the video, a person is using a tool called an angle grinder, which is essentially a spinning blade used for cutting metal. Halfway through using it, the blade supposedly breaks off and flies towards the person's head, but luckily gets lodged in their hat instead of causing injury. However, upon closer inspection of the video, some people have raised doubts about its authenticity. They point out that the angle of the blade in the hat seems inconsistent with the person's hand position, suggesting that the video may have been flipped or staged. Additionally, the fact that the person is not wearing any other safety equipment raises suspicions about the authenticity of the incident. Despite the doubts surrounding the authenticity of the video, if it truly depicts a person escaping unharmed after a blade broke off and got lodged in their hat, they would undoubtedly be counted among the luckiest people alive. A 12-year-old girl from India had been suffering from seizures and headaches for over 2 years. Doctors discovered a tapeworm larva had been living in a cyst in her head for almost 10 years, causing her paralysis. The cyst was so big, it weighed over 1-2 pounds, nearly the size of her entire brain. Despite the risk, doctors successfully removed the cyst through surgery, and the girl recovered fully. It's a miraculous story of survival. In Kenya, a man's truck got overturned by floodwaters from the Galana River, leaving him stranded for over 6 hours. Thankfully, a wildlife conservation team usually focused on rescuing animals used a helicopter to rescue him just in time. It's a remarkable story of survival. He is one of the infinitely luckiest people alive, saved from peril by a daring helicopter rescue in the nick of time. In Florida, a woman driving behind a truck narrowly avoided a serious accident when a loose plywood sheet from the truck flew toward her car, but missed her by inches. The incident highlights the importance of securely tying down loads on trucks to prevent such accidents. It's a reminder for truck drivers to thoroughly check their cargo before hitting the road. The woman who narrowly avoided a potentially fatal accident when a loose plywood sheet flew towards her car stands among the luckiest people ever, escaping unharmed by sheer chance. One of my viewers was driving past a truck when a brake pad flew off and hit their windshield. Luckily, they were able to stop safely, and nobody got hurt, but it shows that unexpected things can happen on the road. This was especially true for Mauricio Henao from California, who narrowly avoided a disaster when a huge rock from a landslide crushed his car just moments after he had stepped out of it. If his girlfriend hadn't called him inside when she did, he could have been seriously injured. It's a reminder of how unpredictable life can be. One day, a young woman named Taiba went for a walk and ended up in a construction site. While exploring, she tripped and landed on a metal rod, but miraculously, it missed all her vital nerves. In the story of Taiba's miraculous survival after landing on a metal rod, she proved to be one of the luckiest people ever. In another story, Michalina Kasperzak escaped from being buried alive in a box by using her engagement ring to free herself. Michalina Kasperzak's escape from being buried alive showcases the resilience of some of the luckiest people who survived the impossible. Meanwhile, cobalt miners in the Congo survived a mine collapse thanks to the heroic efforts of their colleagues. Then, there's the terrifying tale of British Airways Flight 5390, where the plane's captain was sucked out of the cockpit but miraculously survived. Finally, a factory worker named Matthew Lowe was caught in heavy machinery, but managed to survive with only minor injuries. These stories show just how lucky people can be even in the most dangerous situations.